There's a powder sitting in most people's laundry rooms right now that can wipe out an entire ant colony, collapse a flea infestation in your carpets, and send roaches packing permanently for about 3 cents per application. Not $3, 3 cents. The pest control industry in America alone is worth over $40 billion a year, and this powder has been on grocery shelves since 1891. That number is worth sitting with for a second. 40 billion. And the answer to most of what they're selling has been in your home the entire time. Think about how much you've spent. The quarterly spray visits, the jugs of concentrate from the big box store with the cheerful label and the microscopic active ingredient, the traps, the foggers, the plug-in deterrents that hum quietly on your baseboards and do almost nothing. For the average homeowner over 30 years, pest control costs run well into the thousands, and most of it targets the insects you can see, not the colony you can't. Here's what changes today. Because there's a simpler, older, cheaper approach that works differently. Not by chasing pests room to room, but by letting them carry the solution home themselves. Borax has been mined from dry lake beds in California since the 1880s. It's a naturally occurring mineral, sodium tetraborate, pulled from the desert the same way it's been extracted for over a century. The brand name on the box references the mule teams that once hauled it out of Death Valley. It found its way into American homes as a laundry booster, sat on shelves next to the detergent, and slowly faded from everyday conversation as the commercial pesticide industry exploded in the post-war decades, not because it stopped working, because there was no profit in reminding you it existed. Understanding why it works is the key to using it correctly, and the science here is genuinely elegant. Insects don't have skin the way mammals do. They have an exoskeleton, a hard outer shell, and a digestive system that's extraordinarily sensitive to mineral disruption. When a crawling insect walks through borax powder, microscopic particles cling to the joints of their legs. They groom themselves, they ingest it. Once inside, the boron compound does two things simultaneously. It erodes the lining of the digestive tract and draws moisture out of the body at the cellular level. The insect essentially desiccates from the inside out. There's no resistance pathway to this. You can't evolve around dehydration. Penn State Extension research has documented boron compounds continuing to knock down German cockroach populations in environments where synthetic pesticides have progressively lost effectiveness against the same insects. Same pest, same space. The mineral keeps working. The chemicals stop. That gap is exactly what the industry doesn't want to become common knowledge. A standard name brand ant killer at most hardware stores runs $8 to $14 per jug and contains less than 1% active ingredient. The rest is water and filler. A box of borax costs around $3 and, used correctly, lasts the average household 2 to 3 years. The markup isn't just high. It's a fundamental restructuring of what you pay versus what you actually need. But the knowledge gap goes back further than the modern pesticide era. In 1948, the United States Department of Agriculture published a technical bulletin documenting what they called a powder bellows method for borat pest control in rural homes without access to commercial exterminators. Farm families across the Midwest and the South used borat-based treatments for decades. It was cheap, widely available, and effective enough that when synthetic pesticides hit the mass market in the 1950s and 60s, this approach didn't get disproven or replaced. It simply disappeared from public memory. Nobody outlawed it. Nobody found a safer alternative. It got buried under marketing budgets and quarterly spray contracts. The Hidden Fix Lab exists for exactly this kind of recovery, pulling practical knowledge back into circulation after it's been quietly shelved. Here's how to use it, and the details matter more than most sources admit. The most common mistake is using too much. If the concentration is too high, the insects that encounter it die before they make it back to the colony. The queen survives, lays another batch of eggs, and 3 weeks later you're back where you started. The goal isn't instant kill, it's colony collapse. You want the workers to live long enough to share the bait. For standard ant control, mix 1 cup of warm water, half a cup of sugar, and 2 tablespoons of borax until fully dissolved. Soak cotton balls in the mixture, place them in shallow jar lids, and position those lids wherever you see ant activity. The sugar pulls them in. The borax goes home with them. Within 7 to 10 days, the colony structure typically collapses. Not just the workers you can see, but the queen and the larvae underground. Carpenter ants require a different approach because their diet skews toward protein and fat rather than sugar. For these, mix 2 tablespoons of borax with roughly 1/3 of a cup of creamy peanut butter and a small amount of honey to bind it. Or press small amounts onto cardboard squares and tuck them under deck joists, along sill plates, behind sheds, anywhere you've seen activity. The cost is negligible. The effectiveness, applied consistently, is documented and repeatable. For interior perimeter control, the method drawn directly from those old agricultural bulletins, combine 2 parts borax with 1 part powdered confectioner's sugar and sift them together until fully mixed. The fine texture of confectioner's sugar is the key detail here. It clings to insect bodies the way the borax does. making it impossible for them to groom out one without ingesting the other. Load this mixture into an old squeeze bottle or a turkey baster and puff a fine film, not a pile, a film, into the back corners of cabinets, the gap behind your dishwasher, the void under the kitchen sink, and along the top of basement walls where they meet the floor joists. Oregon State Extension and other university agricultural research has documented borat treatments in dry, protected interior locations, maintaining effectiveness for over a year from a single application. For the garden, a light dusting, 1 teaspoon per square yard, no more, around the perimeter of beds where slugs and pill bugs are active will interrupt their feeding without damaging your plants. The critical word is light. Borax is a salt compound, and at high concentrations, it will suppress plant growth and damage soil biology. At trace amounts distributed at the perimeter in dry conditions, it breaks down over a season into elemental boron, which is actually a micronutrient that many American soils, particularly across the southeast, test as mildly deficient. University of Florida IFAS research has flagged boron deficiency, showing up in tomatoes, broccoli, and beets across multiple growing regions. Applied correctly, you're addressing 2 problems with 1 inexpensive mineral. On the question of safety, borax is not food, and it should be treated with the same basic awareness as any household product. Keep bait stations out of reach of pets and small children. Tuck them behind appliances, up on window ledges, inside folded cards taped under countertops. Never broadcast it across a lawn at coverage rates. It will damage grass and slow tree growth at those concentrations. What you're doing here is surgical and targeted, not a blanket application. Done that way, borax is considerably less hazardous than the pyrethroid and neonicotinoid compounds sold in garden center sprays, many of which have been linked in peer-reviewed research to pollinator decline. Borax at ground level in dry, protected locations does not drift, does not aerosolize, and does not reach the flowers your bees are working. That distinction matters for anyone trying to run a garden responsibly. One final point that most guides skip entirely. If you treat one room and the ants reappear in another 3 weeks later, it's almost never because the treatment failed. It's because there were 2 separate colonies the entire time, and you only closed one of them. The most effective approach is to treat the full perimeter, front of the house, back, garage, basement, shed, deck, on the same weekend. 1 pass, 1 box, the whole map. You stop chasing individual outbreaks and start changing the conditions entirely. That's the shift worth internalizing. Not a product swap, not a cheaper version of the same approach, a fundamentally different relationship with a problem that's been treated as permanent and expensive for so long that most people have stopped questioning it. The knowledge that makes this possible isn't new. It predates every spray can in every store. It was known, used, and quietly set aside, and the only thing that's changed today is that you have it back.